Okay, so for this evening, I would just, President Beeler and Vice President Walsh are unable to be here. So, would like to, see if someone would make a motion for to appoint a temporary chair to be in charge of the meeting tonight.
Yeah, I would like to nominate Paul Greenfield to lead the meeting this evening.
Second.
Okay. And then, Marcia, if we could do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Reeder. No Reeder.
Not here.
Okay, Commissioner Walsh.
Not here.
No. Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes. Also not there, but I'm on Zoom, but I'm not official yet.
So then if you could do that next.
Okay.
For the remote.
I will therefore call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners of the Lake Bluff Park District on November 14, 2022. Marcia, do we do the roll call first or
You
vote on?
could do the remote for.
Okay. Commissioner is unable to attend in person, and I would like to have a motion to allow her to participate remotely in this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Marcia, roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes.
Okay. So now can we have a roll call, please? I guess.
Okay. Commissioner Greenfield,
Here.
Commissioner Lane,
Here.
Commissioner Raymore,
Here.
Commissioner Weber,
Here.
President Beeler.
Here.
Now if I can please get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Marcia, roll call?
Commissioner Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore, Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
President Beeler.
Yes.
We do not have any visitors here for the statement of visitors. And we're still taking Zoom?
Yes, there's 2 people online, but nobody has if you want to ask, right now nobody has their hand waved.
Okay, so no one on Zoom has a statement to make during the statement of visitors. Verbal communications. Board President report. Jennifer?
I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay, so we will go on to new business. The first of which is the policy manual, near and dear to my heart. We've all gone over this. I think there are a few points that we need to agree on. There are a number, if we go through this, and as I went through this, there are a number of comments, mainly style comments. And I presume that we will not have, does anyone have any objections to making the stylistic comments that have been done, I guess, by Scott Puma?
Paul, can you kind of state exactly what stylistic comments you're referring to?
Well,
It's like renumbering and
renumbering on page 4,
changes.
where he added committee member, and then he's saying that in the removal of non-elected officers, community representative for employees, that the last sentence seems unnecessary. We then go to page.
Are there any edits in here that you think we kind of merit a bigger discussion?
I think there are some points that merit
Probably are.
bigger discussion.
Okay,
What I
we get to those first, as opposed to going through the stylistic ones.
Well, and
For the
what
sake of time.
you can discuss them, and if there are ones that are going to be, up for discussion, and if there's question whether those are going to be agreed on, you can pull those out, to vote on those separately, and then you can vote on the rest as a package, so you don't spend the night going, one by one. So that would hopefully save some time.
Okay, my comments start, Jennifer, do you want to step in?
Well, why don't you go ahead, Paul, because it may be easier with you being physically present to kind of go through this rather than me over this, so.
Okay. Okay, I just want to bring up, I don't know if we need it, if we should have it or not, in paragraph 2.4, and I'm 2.4 of the policy book, and we then have the ability, it says the board in the first paragraph, president, vice president shall be elected annually. And then it says the board shall determine whether the president, vice president, committee member positions shall be elected for 2 consecutive annual terms. And that to me is a little unclear because we've never done it. Should we take it out of the policy manual and make annual elections, or should we put it in and say we're electing, when we elect the president, we're electing them for 2 consecutive one-year terms? But I don't, it's kind of, to me, it's awkward to decide it at the time.
My question with that is, according to Park District Code, right, what is that referring to?
There's, the Illinois Association of Park District has developed a code for, to reference a lot of these policies.
Yeah.
So that's.
Right, so according to Park District Code, right, that's kind of like the overarching guidelines on this one?
Yes,
Right, the president and vice president shall be elected annually?
annually.
Okay, so I don't think we should really go against that, per se.
I think it's been more too of kind of the history of the board here, that it's typically a 2-year term, but you still are elected annually.
It's been understood
Yeah.
that when you elect the president the first time, they're going to serve for 2 years, but they still have to get elected the next year.
They do, yeah. They still have to be voted and elected.
Has it ever been done that they've been elected for 2 consecutive annual terms? Does anybody know?
I think Rob Douglas was. Trying to think back, when I got here, it was President Considine for 2 years. And then I believe it was Rob Douglas. We can come back and look that information up.
Was Rob put in for 2 years at the start, or did he get voted in?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like he did 4 years.
Okay.
But we can get that information, we can find that out.
So all this is recommending, it's saying for continuity, it's that the Park District has been doing 2 one-year terms, basically.
I have a problem with the language, because shall means you will do it, you must do it. And,
right.
And that is wrong. I mean, if we're gonna say it's one, so I think it should be may serve for consecutive years if we wanna do it, but do we need to have that? Do we just take it out and just go with what the?
I think it's nice to have it in there just as like a thought of, this is a good, I agree that I totally believe in continuity with you. Just in the field of nursing, it's one of those things in NICU, we always have the same, like I would have the same patient, and it's really important. So I think 2 years isn't a very long time. I think it takes a year to learn, and then you become really good your second year. So I think it should stay in there, and if the wording, I'm not an attorney, but there's one on the board who maybe can help us pick a better word for there, or even our attorney, instead of shall, maybe there's a better word.
I agree, if you.
So yes, Emily's right in that the shall is a mandatory, the may is discretionary. So if you're saying shall be elected by the board and serve for a 1-year term, you can modify that to say up to and including 2 years, or until a successor is elected. So are we saying, we're saying that it's a 1-year mandatory, up to 2 years discretionary, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
That's what
So
I
shall-
believe. I think it's good
I'm
to have
fine with
some
that.
continuity.
Okay, so shall be, so that last point, which was formerly N, the last dot or bullet, shall be elected by the board and serve for a 1-year term. And may serve up, and may serve a second 1-year term, or until a successor is elected.
Well, to me, though, that implies that you can only serve for 2 years. Now, traditionally, and I think Rob Douglas was an exception to this, but traditionally, I think the president has generally served for 2 years. And then someone else is elected president. And Rob stayed on, I think partially because of the work that was being done and continuity and so on. But I don't think we should exclude somebody from serving
More
than 2 years.
No, I don't.
You don't have limiting language in here. You don't say that, they may not serve more, a president may not serve for more than X number of years. So you don't have limiting language in there.
I guess what I don't understand is if someone's elected and then they have to get elected the next year, there's always the chance that someone may contest that, right? I mean, unless we say at the beginning that they're voted in for 2 years.
Right. Then the next
That's
year.
what doesn't make any sense to me, like, and I could go either way. I agree with the continuity piece.
I think it's encouraging. So if somebody looks at this and they don't know maybe what's been going on in the past, like, and they see just 1 year, then they think it's just 1 year. Where this allows it to be like, what the recommendation is really to have that continuity and have it for 2 years. But you still follow the code of 1 year, because the code is every year you have to elect. So you're following the code,
Right.
But the practice is to have the continuity, and so to do at least 2 years is recommended. I mean, that's how I read it. The rule is, and the protocol is every year you elect, but the recommendation of our policy here is to do it for 2 years, so there's some continuity. And if you were to do it more, that's okay too.
So then maybe clarifying the language to say that is what we want to do.
Or is it clear now, Jennifer, legally?
Okay, yeah, I'm looking up the Park District Code right now. It says, the president, and the vice president shall hold their respective offices for 1 year or until their successors shall be elected. Secretary and treasurer does not have that same kind of mandate. So it simply says, it doesn't have a number of years. It just simply says that there shall be, it's just that it shall hold their office for a year. It doesn't say that they have to be elected every year.
I think that's implying that they're elected each year and then hold that office for 1 year.
Okay. Okay, so going back to the wording of this.
I mean, if we wanted, I presume we could put in that the president, vice president, and committee members shall be elected for 2 consecutive 1-year terms.
Yeah, because when you read it, it says shall determine. It doesn't say
Right, so then at the election,
You're
the
still
board would have to
deciding,
say,
yeah.
do we want to vote for so-and-so to be president for 2 terms? And I think it's kind of hard to say we want a certain person to be president, but we're not sure we want him to be president for 2 years.
Well, I think to me, when I read this, I think they're implying when you become the president, you are obligated to do it for 1 year.
Yes.
But
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
You're right. So, I mean, it's there as a guide. To me, when I read it, it's just a recommendation to have a consistency of the president to be 2 years. And for me, I think there's a learning process in it that first year, and then you become better at it. And then I think 2 years, you can work better as the leader of the board, and
Okay,
so
so-
I think that's why that's there.
What you can do for that language then is, rather than having it as one bullet point, that bullet point could read, shall be elected by the board and serve for a 1-year term, put a period, and then the next bullet point would be, may be elected to serve for a consecutive 1 year or until a successor is elected.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So can we get that in language, or do we have to go to our attorneys and rack up more bills?
If I go back for a final,
Pardon me?
it will have to go for a final read.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do right now, I've got a computer up in front of me
I'm
to be able to add that, so.
All right, so we're doing 2 sentences, we're breaking it up there.
Okay.
Marcia, did you get that for us? Awesome, thank you.
Okay. Otherwise, in that paragraph, it's all bullet points, crossing out numbers and putting in bullet points. On the board committees, I had brought up something, and I don't know how everyone feels about this. I have a concern when we appoint a citizen member who is a member of other committees in the community, not just the park district, but village, library, school district, or on the boards of other organizations in the community. And I think there's a risk of a conflict of interest. And I believe we can put it in the policy, if we don't want that conflict, and I don't know how y'all feel, but I just see that as potentially a conflict of interest. And I think we have enough people who typically want to serve on committees where we don't necessarily have to do that.
Well, but isn't that just part of the vetting process when somebody wants to join a board? Or join the committee? Okay, are you currently serving on any other committees?
It can be, but right now there's no prohibition against it.
No prohibition, but it's just part of the vetting process where we as a board have to ask that question. I don't think it necessarily needs to be written out.
In some situations, I think it's beneficial when they cross-contaminate, I think of George Russell, with all of his knowledge with the engineering. I mean, he's valuable. And so but he's also on the zoning board or the architectural review board in the village.
Yeah.
But I hate to lose him because he helps a lot with helping interpret some of the engineering stuff, so.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, George is a great resource because he was the civil engineer of our town, so he knows the history of it.
Guys, someday George is not going to be around.
That's
I
right.
guess I have a hard time like codifying something where we're not really necessarily thinking through all the possible side effects here. We just need to do our job as a board, and subsequent boards just need to ask the proper questions.
Agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next point I had was just a wording point on 2.7.
I think before we move on, are we going page by page and just?
In paragraph six, this is on page 14. And the first set of numbers, which will, 6 is crossed out, it's going to be F. It says, but at least no frequently than every 2 years. That's but at least no less frequently than every 2 years. It's got to be less or more. I don't know which it's supposed to be.
Yeah, then less, no frequently, doesn't make sense, they're like canceling each other out,
I think it would be less.
at least every 2 years,
I would think so.
right?
At least, so, less frequent.
Yes. But at least every 2 years.
I don't think,
That's
yeah,
acceptable.
yeah.
All right. The next issue that we had brought up was the issue of Robert's Rules of Order.
Which is on page.
This is a good question. Which I wrote it down, but I didn't write the page number down.
It is on 17,
17?
yes. In the packet, 15 on the policy.
And, yeah, down at the bottom. Well, page 17 of the packet,
Mhm.
right. And we discussed this. Scott Puma has said it's not meant for small bodies like a park district board, difficult to adapt, isn't all that useful. None of us know what Robert's Rules of Order are. And we discussed this, and at the time when we discussed it several months ago, I think we were agreed that Robert's Rules of Order should not govern the meetings. Here it says, then the wording that we came up with, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. Except as provided in this policy manual and when circumstances warrant. Robert's Rules of Order may govern questions or procedures. I don't know how we decide when it does and what rules govern and how we choose and.
I think that's a pretty common statement I've seen in a lot of boards, that if there is a dispute, we can go back to that. If I remember correctly, we decided that the major thing, and I think I brought it up, was the rule is you have a motion, or you have a motion, you second it, and then you have discussion, and we decided that we like it better that we have the discussion first.
Right,
And then
which
we
is
have
the
the
policy.
motion, which is not technically Robert's rules, but that's okay. And then this word may just allows, if something comes up that's procedural, that's very difficult, you could rely on Robert's rules.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem the way it's written. It's like, hey, this is kind of these are the rules here, but if there's something that happens that we don't have rules for, then go to Robert's Rules of Order as a guide. It's not like, we're not beholden to Robert's Rules of Order. We're just like, hey, go check it out, and then maybe that can help out.
But none of us knows what Robert's Rules of Order are.
Right, I would imagine it would be a situation where it's like, hey, we don't know as a board exactly how to proceed, let's consult, come back and discuss, rather than just saying, all right, we're just gonna go to Robert's, we're gonna stop the meeting, go to Robert's Rules and figure it out. It's, it seems like a much broader thing, like a bigger question thing than just kind of
To me, it's just may govern, but how do we decide? When do we decide? Who goes back?
We don't have to, it says may.
Yeah.
It gives us the flexibility. We've never done it in the year and a half I've been here, so.
No, I understand. I think that's a good reason to just not have any reference to Robert's Rules of Order there. If we're not going to follow them, we're not going to learn Robert's Rules of Order. That would be my position, but I'm not going to.
It may be a little bit more clear if we say the policy manual governs the rules of order. well, let's see, hold on just a second. Robert's Rules of Order may govern questions or procedures in certain circumstances. I don't know. I'm trying to find a better way to phrase this so that we say that we're going by the policy manual for our directions
Right.
and Park District Code.
But yeah, something effective like the guidelines outlined in this policy manual shall, kind of govern the rules of order in the event that something, I'm trying to just spitball here, I'm not an attorney. In the event that something that comes up that's not covered in here, board may consult Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
I think that's.
That'd be clearer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
That'd be clearer.
In certain, okay, hold on.
Because, and I see what you're doing, you're just trying to leave it open just in case we're missing something that we haven't thought of, and that would be our backup plan, would be the Robert.
Yeah, I feel like we have to have
Like a backup
something
plan.
to consult, right? It's,
Yeah.
I'm sure Robert's Rules of Order has been around for a while and it's been
Okay.
through, sure.
All right, so this policy manual and Park District Code shall govern his rules of order. In certain circumstances, Robert's Rules of Order may be consulted and used.
Perfect.
Yes.
Love
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. The next thing and again, I'm skipping over style things, and wait, we have to go back. I didn't write the most important thing down. Okay, so on page 16 of the packet, we have the public participation at board meetings. And the issue, if you look at the comments towards the bottom of the page that Scott Puma made, I mean, I think this is something we absolutely have to get clear and stick to whatever we agree to. And this is the issue of, having to continue with the statement of visitors, which we all understand, and to give, I don't have a problem with 30 minutes of potential statements of visitors on non-agenda items. The issue is what public discussion is allowed and when on items on the agenda. And as Scott has written, that unless there's a particular issue where the board makes an exception, which we obviously just got through one of those exceptional times, that the board meeting is a meeting of the Lake Bluff Park District Board of Commissioners, and that the business of the board is discussed by the commissioners. And that's, as far as I know from the history, that's always the way meetings were run until that was adjusted in 2018 to accommodate meetings, public meetings held relative to the golf course. And it was changed in 2018. If you go back through the records, it was changed in 2018 to accommodate that, and it was not changed back.
From my perspective, having people input with a 30-minute limit is not unreasonable, but I can understand why we don't want to have it. That's what I'm used to seeing when I go to board meetings, is that they do allow input and even discussion. You say discussion, but right now there is no discussion. We let people talk, and then we just say thank you and you move on. So,
There never is discussion between boards, elected.
sure, go to the park, go to the village board every single time.
Well, and I think that's why
You're allowed
the
to
statement of
comment, but you're
visitors
not
tends to
allowed
be different from the public comments that were made. We're not, you know, if people feel that they want something said about an agenda item, they can send an email. I mean, they can certainly write in to let the board know how they feel. I think when we've had statements from visitors, you know, I can think back to last summer when we had a couple people come in, can you leave the pool open an extra half hour? There was something else about fees at the pool for large families, you know, things like that, where they're not expecting an answer right then and there, but they wanted to present something to be considered by the board, and we considered it, and, you know, staff considered it, and
Yeah, because
and
you
we
have
made some
to,
changes.
you have to do your research. Just because somebody asks a question doesn't mean you give the answer. You have to, everybody has to research, and everybody has a different opinion. That's why they elected 7 different people, and we're not all the same.
Right.
So if we were to answer that question, we would probably all have different answers. And so you can't respond to the questions that are being asked, because you just can't. It wouldn't be fair.
And I don't want to take over this meeting, and I don't want to extend this personally. I think we should allow visitors to speak at the topic agendas, but I'm just a person, a vote. I don't need to hang this up. I would just ask that when we come to vote on the policies, we can separate this out as a specific.
Just to
vote on
clarify,
this
did you
one.
mean
That's all.
discussion or comment? To be able
Comment,
to-
comment.
You to be able to
Yeah, I mean,
comment.
our policy says discussion, and we
Yeah.
aren't doing that.
Right.
But to hear the comments.
Okay, so you've got 3 basic areas in this particular heading. One of them is the statement of visitors that I think we're pretty much all in agreement about. The statement of visitors allows the 3-minute comment, and it pretty much ends before Scott had the red line additions. The second one is email, and we already have the portal open, and I guess really the question there is whether we read these aloud or we do anything with them other than include them in the packet. And then the third one is public participation under continuing or new business.
Can I make a comment about that last sentence? To me is confusing. A citizen submitting public comment will have the option to request that his or her communication not be distributed to the board. If it's public comment and you're writing to the board, why should you have that option?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense, and it's not you're right, Scott, it's not in keeping with what we talked about, because people can submit through the portal. It'll be and they know it's going to be part of our packet. If they submit something directly to a board member, you know, they're choosing to submit it to a board member or to the board directly, not to be included in public comment.
Or they don't know there is a portal, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, isn't the standard that anything that's submitted is public comment?
No, there's a question on there, they choose. They can choose whether they want to include it in a packet or not include it. So it just is an email as a comment that goes to the board, or it can go to the board plus be included in.
And they have to check, they have to.
It's a
Okay.
required box,
Okay.
they have to
Good.
check. That's active, it's in our, we'll put it on the last newsletter, that portal is now active.
And if someone sends an email and says they want it to be public?
If they click on that, then yes.
No, if they don't send it to the portal, I mean, not everyone's gonna know about the portal, that's the
They just send me
problem.
an email and they say
Yeah.
what they wanted.
It's almost like you eliminate the email addresses on the website
Right.
and just say use the portal.
I think some people are more comfortable with different commissioners, and they feel more comfortable giving their opinion, or, so to have the option of speaking to all of us or one of us, that's what we're doing. That's what I feel like we're doing here, is that you can speak to everybody, or sometimes I'm sure you've received emails that I haven't received, and I'm okay with that, you know?
So right now, they do have both. It's on that same page, it's on the board page, so you can, click on individual for each commissioner, but you can click on all commissioners. It's on the contact us, which is on the home page. So you can do whether you want to contact Park District staff about a question, or you're all board, that's on there as well. And then it's on our quick links, which is also on the homepage. So we have it in 3 different places. This email all the board members.
And I think that has to do with like, I'm on the facilities program, so sometimes people, oh, well, I have this issue with facilities, where I'm sure you probably get more beach and parks, maybe questions. And so I think that's what happens. Like, I think people get more focused.
That's fine. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that if somebody does want something public, we can't assume people are all gonna go to the portal. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. I think that last sentence doesn't make sense at all, because we're saying the portal's going to be going to the package.
It's going, but, it's right. So it can be, they can choose whether to distribute it to,
The portal can still be an option.
Only the packet, yeah.
It is still an option for the portal if you want it to be distributed. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is an option in the portal when you click on it.
And maybe that's it. That maybe, instead of doing one person at a time, it's just easier to click on that link that has everybody attached to it.
Yeah, that's what has to be cleaned up there. It says not distributed to the board. And that's a board portal. They can choose whether they want to include it in the board packet, but not whether they want it distributed to the board. It will, if they submit it, it will automatically be distributed to the board. That's not something we can control.
Right, because so far we've gotten one.
We have.
Yeah.
You also received that copy. That'll be on the next regular board meeting packet, in the packet.
So do we want to eliminate that last paragraph on the page?
Last sentence, you mean?
The last
Or
sentence.
last paragraph?
A citizen, is that a citizen submitting? Is that the one, or?
Under each unfinished, is that the one
Okay.
you're talking about, Paul? Under each finished or continuing
This
business?
is the one where we have public comments at meetings on agenda items.
But hang on, Paul, before you go there, I want to wrap up this sentence piece. So are we keeping the sentence, or are we deleting it? The citizen submitting public comment sentence. I vote for just eliminating.
I would recommend maybe just consider changing the sentence to say that they can choose whether it's included in a board packet.
It's just confusing. Why do we even need to say it's going to be included or not? Like, just take it out.
Yeah.
For
You do that.
ambiguity purposes. Well, we're not even deciding on anything tonight. We're just discussing. Sorry to pick up a hornet's nest there.
No,
No, it's good.
I'm good with taking that out.
So you're taking just a citizen or the whole
The sentence.
citizens from the citizens?
Well, this is the last sentence of the
The red words.
in
Yes.
red, yeah.
Yeah.
If they submit public comment,
It gets
then
included.
it's public comment.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Paul. This last paragraph.
All right, so the last paragraph then relates to public comments spoken at meetings on agenda items, which Scott Puma has advised is typically not done. And I think it's not been the practice of the board until very recently. And I think it's disruptive to the meetings. And we don't need it. They make written comments. If they have written comments, they can make written comments. And obviously, if we come to a point where we feel that public comments are needed, or we need a public meeting, then we can always choose to do that.
So is the easiest thing to do, it's kind of like, there's 2 steps here, right? If you remove that paragraph and there is an issue that arises, then you have kind of a special meeting where the agenda is that topic and the public has, 30 minutes, or, we can waive that
Right.
should we choose, for the public to state those comments. So it's kind of like a separate meeting or a separate agenda item.
Correct.
Because it's so big and broad.
Correct.
I support that. leave this language in here, you know, what am I going to say here that's not controversial? I think it's important to continue to have public comment, but somehow engage in that comment and have point people in the right direction, not necessarily like have a dialogue with people or with the community during agenda, or I'm sorry, during meetings, but what was so frustrating, you know, and this is just me speaking personally, what was so frustrating to me is to sit there during meetings and want to just direct the citizens to something where they could learn more or inform themselves, but yet we couldn't. So I don't know. I just feel like, you know, having smaller sessions is going to be more important, and certainly less disruptive for like the normal course of business, because, you know, 11 times out of 12 when we meet, it's going to be for non-controversial topics, so we can just kind of motor right through that.
So we take that out?
Well, I like the provision in there, though, that gives the president discretion to be able to have that comment, because there are going to be some topics that, you know, you do want to invite the public to comment on. And I think we're looking at things like two different ways. One is just public comment, where you're right, it's listening. And the other one is more of a Q&A session, which we'd have to designate.
Well, I think in setting a policy, though, I mean, I would say remove this paragraph in terms of policy. The board can choose, and we can certainly put something in there, that the board can choose for any topic we desire to add a period of public comment to be decided at the time.
Okay, so modify that whole paragraph to say the president, at his or her reasonable discretion, and with consent of the board, can add public comment.
I would say the board.
Okay, the board. Well, then when do we determine that? Before the meeting, during the meeting?
I would say before the meeting. I mean, if we come in and there's something where we know we want to get public comment from, and we know that there are some topics coming up where we'll want that, then pardon?
I'm just thinking you can't really get consent of the board until you're there at the meeting, because of open meetings. You'd have to kind of like put it as an agenda item to say, okay, our topic is, you know, preschool, and you know that people want to comment. So
if it comes up enough in advance, we can do it at a meeting. If it doesn't come up enough in advance, then the members can be polled individually prior to the meeting, so that the first thing at the meeting is we take a vote, we know that we're going to allow public comment.
okay.
I mean, here.
I just think it should be the exception rather than.
Right, and that's what I was about to say. Here, it's kind of like encouraging for people to just ask questions, like this is the process. It's almost like this is a process versus an exception. So if we can reword it so it says with an exception of, like, again,
Correct.
a big topic. Because nobody's gonna question numbers and finances and things like that. But you also don't want to, this is kind of giving, that's the protocol right here, and it should be an exception, like, to the rule. So
Right.
How do we change it so it's not the standard, so that people aren't like, well, that's the standard, you know, it's for when it's needed.
This is the rule, and we can make exceptions to the rule.
When it's needed, when we need more public feedback.
I mean, Jennifer, I've seen exceptions made at meetings where if there's one visitor, and that visitor has you know, depending who the visitor is, and George is a good example, Sue, where exceptions have been made, where he's the one at the meeting, and we're talking about something that is relevant to him, and he's knowledgeable about it, then I don't think anyone's going to have any problem if he has a comment to make where the president says, sure, George, go ahead and make that comment. But I think it's a different story. I think that should be the exception and not.
Right, and this is the protocol, right? The protocol is just to do like we normally have been doing, which is just, you know, discuss it. And then there's always exceptions to the rules.
Can I just clarify? Are we referring, when it says public participation at board meetings, are we referring to this board meeting, or are we referring to committee of the whole? Are we referring to committee meetings?
All meetings.
All meetings. So even in a committee meeting, we don't allow public comment, because I've seen public comment a lot. And I just try to.
I know, so this is the protocol, but then sometimes it just. When I mean, committee meetings sometimes are a little different when you get, so does it, you have to follow you have to follow the policy, so then you have to have, if this is the policy and we're doing this, then you have to have something that says you're allowed to, if necessary, to get something, you have to have like an exception of when you can.
Okay, so that line that's close to the bottom of this provision, it says this policy shall apply to all committee meetings of the district, actually should be moved to the beginning. Because, and then that'll have everything applied to everything below. Then you've got the statement of visitors that's always going to be on all meeting agendas, and that's stated that way. You've got your written comments that can come in, and then we're saying that paragraph that says under each unfinished or continuing business will be at the board's discretion. Citizens may be provided the opportunity to provide comments to the board regarding a specific agenda item for continuing and new business action items. Is that what
I think
summarizing that, or no?
Is too on the fence.
Jennifer, what were you proposing that at the beginning of the paragraph that says under each unfinished or continuing, change the word citizens shall to citizens may?
So it started off with at the discretion of the board.
Okay.
Okay, at the discretion of the board, citizens may be provided the opportunity to provide comments regarding specific agenda items. And then do this, the same kind of 3-minute per citizen.
And again, May does not require you to do it. It just.
I know, but I think it creates too much potential conflict. If people feel they should be awarded, they should be afforded the opportunity and they're not. I think it should be, we do not allow, unless an exception is made by the board.
That's what she's saying, at the discretion of the board, right?
Or other public comments should not be made at the meetings.
Yeah, I'm concerned about making it too capricious, though. I mean, the example you just brought up about George is good, but it's not just gonna, we don't want to just single out George Russell. There may be other people that we don't know as well, or we don't know what they're going to say, and their input can be very valuable as well.
And I know it's been done, and I was probably running the meeting when it was done, but George was the only one here. And if we want to say we're not going to do that, then I'd rather not do it. And I'd rather say, George, give me a call tomorrow, or I'll call you tomorrow, or write an email. That's, if that one exception is going to open the floodgates for everything else.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are some things that are necessary to have that open meetings and have those comments made in public. I agree that it shouldn't be a debate and it's not a Q&A session, but
Yeah, but for the,
I mean, Scott's written it, that we can take that paragraph out, and I think, again, I think the reason is because they're meetings of the Lake Bluff Park District Board, and not, it really, the discussion should be between board members. We're the ones who are elected to do that, and we're the ones who are elected to discuss these things. And that's how every other, government board, Congress doesn't allow the public to get up at their sessions and make comments. There are other ways of making comments, there are other ways of making your feelings known.
let me see if there's anything.
And again, I think this was put into place to accommodate meetings and was never removed. It was made part of the policy, and it was never removed from the policy.
You can say that, I'm not sure that's the case, but I guess I would just suggest that on points like this, when we don't have an agreement, that we vote on it separate when we come to time to vote on it. I mean, at the end of the day, I hate to vote no on the entire policy if there's one piece I don't disagree on, because most of it I do.
Yeah, I'm just quickly looking at some other board meeting policies and
See, Sue,
I got a park here.
part of what you said before, I agree with. And to an extent, and again, I hope not too many people are listening to this, but I to an extent, I think the meetings where people get up and make their little 3-minute talk is less useful than if we say we're going to have, we're going to open up a meeting to a Q&A.
Well, see, frankly, in a committee of the whole, when we're discussing, not voting, I would love to hear that. If a resident came in with a comment, I'd love to hear it as we have our conversation to maybe consider something.
We're the elected board.
And we're trying to do what the community, what's best for
But
the
we're
community.
elected to do that. We're not.
I know about you, but I do make my decisions on input, so.
Well, yeah, but we don't poll the community on every decision we make.
I'm not saying we're polling, but.
We don't
if
poll the
someone-
community on.
I would always listen to a resident if they had something to say. That's just my personal.
Well, but you can't, they can write in. It's not that we don't have a means of them communicating. But it just doesn't interrupt the meeting. It doesn't come and break up the meeting and break up the discussion between the people who are supposed to be the ones making the decisions.
We won't agree on everything. It's okay.
maybe we should come back to this one and continue.
yeah,
Hang on, you didn't miss anything.
And come back to this, you said. I have a question as to whether we should continue. Now, if, depending what we do here, it changes things. What do we do? We're no longer doing Zoom for commissioners, correct? Yet there has to be a reason for a commissioner to be allowed to participate remotely.
Yes.
Do we want the public to be able to participate remotely? So, and I'm not saying that they might not be able to look into the meeting remotely. But should we be asking the public for comment on Zoom when the public emergency is over and we're supposed to be attending meetings?
I always like to have more channels of communication rather than less, because there are people who are engaged in this community and have opinions, and if life takes them away, they could choose to be heard. Now, they could also choose to be heard via email or written correspondence, but 3 minutes isn't, I don't think, is really gonna make or break anyone.
I don't have any problem with, clearly, since I am by Zoom, problem with the Zoom participation.
Do we put that in the policy manual? Or do we not need to?
I don't think we need to.
The only thing that I would point out on the remote participation or attendance on page 20 of the packet, 18 of the manual, it says that commissioners can remote or participate remotely but not exceed more than one meeting in a 12-month period. This was written in like 2009. That was just really first coming on. So that might be something that you want to consider. I think when I'd asked Scott, they didn't put a recommended max or minimum. That it just says that they can participate again if they have one of those, reasons, but they can participate remotely. They don't put a max of how many within a year that you can do.
Yeah, the remote policy was my next point.
Okay.
Which is fine. I mean, let's start discussing it.
Yeah. I mean, could you just, put some language in the beginning of that sentence saying Park District or commissioners are encouraged to attend all meetings in person. However, it is the policy of blah, 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 to participate in open or closed meetings from a remote location via telephone, video, or internet connection, and then just period.
If I'm not mistaken, the reasons why that we need in order to attend remotely are part of the Open Meetings Act.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
The three reasons, if you're looking at prerequisites in paragraph 2 or B, those three reasons, I think, are part of the Open Meetings Act.
Yes, I believe you're correct, because it applies to other, not just park districts, but the village or other, so I think it is part of the.
So that we have to stick to.
The reasons.
But we don't have to stick to the number of meetings during the year that a commissioner can
Correct.
be remote if they meet these requirements.
But it does say applicable laws in there. Compliance with this policy and Any other?
Do we want to put a limit on remote meetings, or do we want to eliminate any limitations on them?
I'm in favor of removing the language, starting with not to exceed and ending with applicable laws.
That's not to exceed one if you don't, that's just one that you can miss for just any reason. But if you are taking care of somebody's, if you have any of those three reasons, it could be more than one.
Yeah, I know.
Right? I think there should be some, I think there needs to be some limit of how many you can miss, because I think it is important for everybody to attend. And it should be something like that is listed here, and it shouldn't be anything else. It should be, you know, I mean, you took on this role as an elected official, and it's definitely like, you know, it is a lot of work. And so you should then, you know, not miss any meetings unless it's one of these three things. So one, I don't think, you know, I think you have to have something because there needs to be some commitment. So people know, like, you have to take this serious. You can't just become an elected official and, you know, and not attend any meeting. So if you don't have anything there, then why would somebody show up? They could just say,
Because we all, I mean, I think most people realize that working in person is the better way to go about this.
But this is just a policy, right? If the policy is there, then you know what the rule is. It's always good to have a policy, right?
Sure, but you generally, well, I don't want to say that sentence. We have 24 meetings a year, so this applies to all 24 meetings. I think one is rather restrictive.
I do too.
Because at the end of the day, and this is me selfishly, I have a family, I have 85 employees who work for me, and those two things take priority rather than this. This is an unpaid volunteer position that I take extremely seriously. But it does fall number 3 in the pecking order.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. But there has to be something that should, like a commitment. And maybe it's not one, maybe it's a different number. But I don't think eliminating it at all and not having something there, okay. I don't agree with.
If somebody were to have to get a new job and they're traveling a lot and they couldn't be here a lot of times because Monday might be the day that they're out of town, I would rather them attend remotely than to have them absent all the time.
Oh, no, I'm not saying about, like, that doesn't.
You know, that's a tough decision, but it's a decision for an individual to make. You know, it's kind of like we set the meeting days, right? We set the calendar, we're gonna do it at the December meeting. We're gonna have the calendar for meetings next year. And I think if somebody, I mean, I know, you know, several years ago when I was traveling all the time, I just wouldn't have been able to run for the board. I just wouldn't have been able to say I could commit that many days to being here in person. And I agree with Emily. I think it's important to be here in person, and, you know, things happen. And I think we all recognize that. And I agree that the number should not be one. One is really just, to me, not enough.
So,
but I think there has to be a number.
Right, okay. Is there like a happy middle ground that we can kind of come to that we think is appropriate? Maybe not to exceed?
Yeah, not to exceed is better. I think.
Well, I just say not to exceed,
12, half of them? Like,
yeah, I was gonna do like 6 is kind of the number that came into my head. It's 25%. If you have more than that, then it's like, maybe you need to kind of rethink.
If you can do this, yeah.
Even if stuff does, you know.
Yeah, and then it doesn't mean that, you know, at the time you probably thought you could do it, but then, you know, again.
Jennifer?
I agree with the not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
Yeah, 25%, as you said, 6.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, what happens if they do? I mean, is there
then you revert to that initial policy that says the board can vote to, can remove somebody.
Right, yeah, I mean, and then you could say, okay, this situation, maybe it was,
If the person's kind of a jerk, then yeah, number 7, they're probably gone, If they're kind of holding people together, then all right, well, let it slide.
Yeah, exactly, it's just, there's the guide, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But it is a commitment.
Okay, what is the attendance policy? Our policy manual says there's an attendance policy. That there's an ordinance for it, and I've never seen that ordinance. Has anyone ever seen it? Can we find out if there really is an ordinance, or if it's all made up and just there to frighten people into?
Yeah, I'm just looking at 6.1.
Because we're talking, the previous paragraph is remote attendance when you meet one of these 3 criteria. But, so, technically when we go on vacation, we don't meet the criteria. If there's a meeting, we miss the meeting. Which, we're all hoping to go on vacations and, but how many meetings, someone who's on vacation every month. We ought to kind of know that, I think.
We might have to dive into that one a little bit deeper there. I don't know if anyone here really knows what that is referring to.
I don't see enough. I can't find anything specific in the Park District Code, but again, not my forte, so.
What's the policy for the village? Does anyone know?
I don't.
If we find that ordinance, we'd have to look at the ordinance separately. Because to change an ordinance, you have to pass another ordinance.
Right. So that's a little homework for next time, is to figure out what this ordinance actually is. Man, attorneys just muddle everything up. Oh, did I say that? Sorry, Jennifer.
I heard nothing.
All right, so other than that one paragraph on the public comment period, we're really looking at stylistic things.
Well, I guess,
Does anyone else have any comments on meaningful things?
I just was gonna say that we needed to add the golf committee under.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We need to add the golf committee to the standing
Under-
committees, correct.
That was it, yeah. And then.
There was one point at the top of this, I'm trying to get to it, which is more language, it's not meaningful. On page 7 of the packet, relates to resignation. It says, once a resignation is received, the board has 30 to 45 days to fill the vacancy. And he's saying delete 30. Yeah, okay, so he said has 45 days.
It doesn't make any sense that way.
Doesn't make sense, 30 to 45.
You have a deadline.
okay. Works for me.
Well, I think we're kind of like all in agreement that public participation section needs to be addressed.
Jennifer, can I just make a couple comments?
Yeah.
At the meeting where we first discussed this, I believe you two were not present, but we were. I'm reading the minutes from March 30th. Commissioner Votto felt there should be public comment during each agenda item. Commissioner Walsh said that residents should be encouraged to speak at the beginning of the meeting. I'm looking in the Gurnee Park District Code, and basically what they do is kind of a compromise, and they have the 3-minute limit, 30 minutes, but they allow agenda and non-agenda items. And that way, it wouldn't be at each agenda item, but it would give the community an opportunity to say something, like we do now, but it would include agenda and non-agenda. Is that something people could live with? It's kind of a compromise of what Jennifer and Nikki and Ann said.
We've talked about that.
We're not extending comment time, we're still saying no more than 30 minutes. We're saying 3 minutes, but that allows both agenda and non-agenda items. And if we want it, there's language right here in the Gurnee Park District that we could use.
Yeah.
What was the purpose behind it not always being non-agenda items? What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, non-agenda items, right, if you just want to make a comment,
Yeah.
right, you feel more comfortable making a public comment than written correspondence. I can see that.
I'm just wondering why they chose to do the statement of visitors had non-agenda versus any comment, any public comment.
Yeah, it's so simply, you get the soapbox, you can say what you want about the park district.
But nothing that we're going to be discussing.
Well, no, but like what I think of is like the woman who came in and said, I have so many kids and I can't afford it, it's getting very expensive, but things that we might not know about, and it just makes
No, I know
us
that's how it is
aware.
right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the reasoning behind that? Why was that like that? There has to be a reason, or was there no reason?
It's
Of why?
probably in the code somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is that,
Because it was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we go, we can kind of set
is there?
the rules a little bit, right? Like,
No, for sure, that's what we're policy-making board.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out, is there a reason that was there? Can anybody think of a reason why it would be beneficial to just have non-agenda items versus having all?
The Open Meetings Act requires that we give time for public comment. But
It doesn't say.
my reading of the Open Meetings Act didn't say anything about non-agenda items, certainly.
Okay.
And it does give the board the right to choose the amount of time. I think that's okay.
It's kind of a compromise, and it's not at the time of the agenda, but I actually like it ahead of time, so that when we get to that agenda item, it's in my head, so, yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out if there was a reasoning behind it, and
The only
I can't
thing
think
I
of one.
think of for a reason would be, whether the board would allow comment on something that's on the agenda that they're gonna talk about, and try to clarify, and whether they want the public talking about it before the board can get to that on the agenda. Just guessing, maybe that was maybe that's a
Thought
concern.
process, that makes more sense, yeah. that makes sense.
But this eliminates is the whole meeting gonna be people getting up to talk? So, Jennifer, if you want, this is Gurnee 1.7.16,
Okay.
and I can give this to John or anybody else.
Yeah, I think looking at other park districts is a good guide to see how they address these things.
I mean, we're getting written comment from the people already. So it's, I'm trying to think of what you just said, John, and how that might influence things. But we see the written comment prior to the meeting regardless. So if they send an email, we're going to see that. This is just in lieu of an email, basically.
Because it's only 3 minutes.
I could go with that, 30 minutes beginning of the meeting, 3 minutes per person.
And they can only speak once, is what
Only
this
speak
policy
once.
says.
Anytime.
Pick your battle.
Any topic related to the park district.
Yeah, and then that would get rid of any, that would be the only
Yep.
public comment
Right,
during that meeting.
correct.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Jennifer?
So if I'm hearing this, then it would be the statement of visitors would include any topic, not just non-agenda.
Right.
Related to the park board.
yeah, really.
Really, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
That's good to clarify that. Any topic, okay. And we're limiting it to, again, a 30-minute.
30 minutes, beginning of the meeting, same place it is now.
Okay,
They can speak
Okay.
once, not once on different topics, but once.
yeah. Well, then just to kind of clarify, because there is something I think like under the Zion Park District that they have, it's not a question and answer, it's not a debate or a question and answer session. I don't know if we want to include something like that, because we do have that whole provision about courtesy and about, no disparagement kind of thing. Do you want to keep that all in?
Mhm.
You mean the following paragraph?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. Okay, we should ask Scott just to kind of put headers on this so that each one of this is a little bit clearer. Okay, so it's going to be that the statement of visitors will be there, and that will include also any topic related to the board. Then there's going to be the public emails. And then we'll have the provision about the statement of visitors and public comment time not used by citizens to make personal attacks. That policy relating to all business meetings of the park district goes really at the very beginning of this particular topic of public participation. And then we have that last provision at the end about the task force.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to take that out.
Okay,
That paragraph on the task force, because
Which one is that? What page?
it's page 30, or excuse me, 17 of the packet, 15 of the policy manual.
Okay.
So we're removing that paragraph entirely.
yeah,
Because it just relates to the task force, like it's a different,
because the policy relates, the statement of visitors relates to all meetings of all committees of the park district.
I'm in favor of removing that.
Me too.
Can I ask this though, because kind of dovetailing what Sue just said, we do have that provision in the paragraph that's on the top of page 15 that says the board can agree to extend time for public comments. Can we add that to the statement of visitors? Because if you're broadening the statement of visitors to be topics that are related, we may as a board decide to go over the 30 minutes.
Sure. I mean, it gives us the option. It doesn't mean we have to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Yeah.
On page 16 of the packet, right above the public participation at board meetings, we have this paragraph on petitions submitted by residents. Do we go along and take that out, which is what Scott has recommended? We've never allowed residents to put items on the agenda.
Yeah, and I think his comment in here is we don't ever specify what a petition is.
Yeah.
I mean, if Scott's saying that most units of government don't allow residents to place matters on the agenda, then
Yeah.
I'm gonna side with council.
I agree also.
Okay, so we remove that. Anything else?
No, I wasn't sure, for the treasurer's role, if it was just a one-time thing where we did, where, the treasurer was also one of his responsibilities. One of his also responsibilities, the treasurer, was to help do the evaluation with executive director. Did you do that?
The
Scott?
evaluation, like the annual review?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should you add that as part of the role, as a policy? So going forward, or no, just was thinking should it be part of the policy?
Sure, we can cover, yeah, we can
It's not in there?
by that.
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Is there anything in here about review of the executive director?
I think it's a responsibility of the president, isn't it?
It is, but remember we decided as a board we voted to have the treasurer.
I don't think it's a bad idea, but is that where we should put it in the duty of the treasurer?
Should be noted somewhere. And I just think because the president's roles are broken down. It's because, for the president says schedule an annual board evaluation for the president.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I just didn't know if we should add for the treasurer, something with that.
Yeah. Is that another bullet point?
Yeah.
Sure.
Good.
Okay.
Jennifer, you had a thought?
Yes, it's a schedule.
No, I said good. I think that's a good point.
Let's actually hold it.
I mean, we could also change that. Conduct. Yeah.
Was that the last point, John, Paul? I have one comment from the previous discussion, if we're done with, are we done going through the?
All right, let's agree. So we're going to say the president conducts an annual performance evaluation of the executive director in conjunction with the treasurer?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
It's a big part of your job, yeah.
No pressure. Nobody's gonna sign
Then
up
they
for
can figure out
treasurer.
how it best works, whether it's input or being there, yeah.
I mean, if that works out, I mean, that's what I'm just bringing it up. Does it need to be a policy?
Yeah, no, it should be. I mean, it's in there as, we have responsibilities for other committees, members, so we should have it there too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the idea is we get this done for the November regular meeting?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay? Move on?
Mhm.
It's good.
Next item on the agenda, strategic planning.
Oh, wait,
Oh, hang on.
I'm sorry. Oh, I have one comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I wasn't sure if you were moving on to the next item or the next topic. Again, back in June, I had suggested that we change the board, consider changing the board meeting to a different night.
Yeah.
So we're not in conflict with the village board meeting. And what we suggested, Commissioner Lane suggested discussing meeting days with the tri-board, and all agreed. So do you know, did that discussion happen, or should it happen? If no one wants to do it, that's okay, but it would be nice to give people an opportunity to attend different meetings in the village.
Well, again, we used to have the regular meetings the third Monday, but that did not give the
Finance,
finance
right.
person, whoever that was at the time, the opportunity to get the prior month's finances in.
Right, so then it was a discussion of could we do it another day of the week? And so we just said, we'd ask the tri-board to talk about
And I
that.
think that's
this week.
Jennifer. Jennifer's on the, right, Jennifer, you're on the tri-board?
Yes, well, yeah, because John and I attend those meetings.
When is your next one?
Well, we don't have, it would be, they did not hold the November one. We would have one in December. And we don't have that same constraint anymore with the financial preparation, correct?
Is that correct, Walt?
If we have.
You're done by the 5th of the month, right?
Rolf, if we have the meeting on the third Monday, you'll have the prior month's records done?
Wow.
Affirmative. Should we go back to the first and third Mondays? First Monday for the cow and third Monday for the regular?
Well, we were
Or do we go to Wednesday or another day of the week?
I'm okay with Monday, and it was just, a suggestion I had.
I think that there seems to be the tradition of Mondays, but if we do change it to another day, we'd have to do it, I think, before the December meeting, don't we, Jen?
Yeah, it has to be adopted and then filed with the county in December.
Right, yeah.
So,
I think Mondays are good. If I just think about like kids' schedules and everything's during always the weekday, I feel like Monday nobody ever does because it's like the first day of the week and everybody's hustling to get back. So I feel like Monday's a good day. It's just.
This is not something that is like rush critical, but I mean, if we don't feel we're ready this year, can we think about what day works and plan on it for 2024? I mean, it doesn't have to be made to the decision today, I
Well,
think.
but we're doing the schedule, so
Yeah.
now is the time,
If everyone's comfortable with it, that's fine by
Going back
me,
to
but
the original days, which is
Yeah.
first and third, you said? Mondays of the month?
yeah, first and third
Does
Monday.
that work for you guys, for the staff?
It does, as long as Wolf can, work his magic by the third week and get the finance report ready. We already have a draft calendar with the second and fourth. We can do a second one easily. We look at the school district holidays and try to take a lot of things, regular holidays into consideration in case one has to be moved here or there. But we can do that for the first and third so that you have two draft, calendars to look at, and you can decide which one is going to, which one you want to vote on, which one would work better.
well, not to put a wrench in this, but and we don't have to decide this today, but there was a discussion at some point, I'm not sure where, that we talked about maybe doing the committee of the whole before the board meeting? I'm
All
not
on the
saying,
same night?
yeah,
I remember this discussion.
yeah, I'm not saying we should, I just remember we did discuss it, and I don't know if we want to discuss that, or if we want to wait for next year.
I don't know, like, looking at the clock right now, and you add a board meeting to that. But then you just do one night and get it all done.
Yeah.
Makes for long nights.
It does make for a long night.
Would you rather have one long night or two long nights? 'Cause what tends to happen in these things is that they just kind of keep going, and when you try to cram a lot in, the decisions tend to get made a little quicker.
Yeah, the only advantage would be you are limited then on your timing for your committee of the whole meeting. You know you have a stop time.
See, I always felt that the committee of the whole meeting should be used, all right, tonight we're talking about this, but we're talking about it to get it done before the regular meeting, because we have more action for the regular meeting. And I always wanted to use the committee of the whole meetings to discuss, take one topic. Now, tonight we have two on the agenda, but, beach, pool, pickleball, whatever, and have a more general discussion
Right.
rather than leading up to a vote on that topic necessarily. And
I'm just, it's not I didn't initiate that, I just remember we had conversation about
Yeah,
that,
I
so.
remember that too, yeah. Well, yeah.
I like the idea of having a separate meeting. And if we don't have a topic, we don't have a topic. We don't, we've canceled meetings in the past.
I can go either way.
I think the committee, to go back on one of your points, no, I think you typically would have that when you were discussing items on the agenda. And so you have the committee of the whole meeting where you're not voting on those items, but you're discussing those items. And then when you get to the regular meeting, you then put those items are on the agenda.
Yeah.
And then you have a quick discussion after the motion is made. But we typically have not done that. We've typically used committee of the whole meetings to discuss different topics.
Right, I'm just bringing it up that it was discussed as a possible, and I think we said we would continue that discussion. If we want to table that till next year, or maybe talk about it later, I can live,
Either way, it's not something that needs to be written into the policy manual, is that correct? Or is it?
the board meeting is written in, but
Just the draft calendar that we're working on.
Yeah.
but on the other hand, if we did feel we had a topic that it'd be good to discuss and then vote on, we could change the committee of the whole and just, cancel one and reschedule. I'm not saying we're going to, I'm just saying.
You're saying reschedule on the same day of a board meeting?
If we want it, I'm just saying
Yeah.
we always have the option to change a meeting if we.
Yeah,
feel
can you always
it's-
try that? Can you try to see how it worked out, have a Cal meeting before a board meeting?
Well,
During the
again,
year? Could you do that, possibly?
we have to file the calendar with the county for the whole year
Okay.
of all the meetings.
But then you can cancel one and then
You can cancel,
reschedule.
you can change, you
Yeah.
can change a committee of the whole to a special.
I think maybe just for the sake of simplicity, maybe we'll just keep the committee of the whole separate, or I suggest we keep this committee of the whole separate, as much as it pains me to say that. Because we do always have the option of saying, hey, there's nothing on the agenda, we're just gonna cancel this and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
That's right. We did that, I think, last month, didn't we? Or we did the month before?
It's been a handful of times.
Yep, we've done it recently.
And just to ask about the calendar that we're putting together, that includes all the committee meetings, the golf, the Parks and Beach and everything, John?
Yes, it will.
will?
Before we send it out, yes. So
Okay.
it'll just be based on that rotating schedule, but now we'll add in golf. But it's gonna change a little bit, so as a standing committee, so we'll do that same rotating
Okay,
with committees, one a month.
So we'll only meet 3 times a year for each committee, not 4.
And then it's, or as needed. Those committee meetings can be had.
Which is still good, I mean, 3.
Yep.
Golf committee will meet in January.
Schedule's already set.
All right, shall we move on? Strategic planning. Discussion.
Yes, we're in the process of reaching out to some different consultants that do the strategic planning. We've discussed it briefly, I believe in the past, but both the village and the school district are updating theirs. We've talked about, and ours is, ours, I think, was dated from 2015 to 2019, so we need to update ours as well. So there's some discussion that the 3 agencies can do, maybe hire their own consultant to do their own strategic plan, but then we hire one to try to connect them and for the community sake, to see what sort of, common areas there are that could be incorporated into that strategic plan. So right now, we're just in the process of reaching out to a few. We're hoping to get 3 or 4 different consultants that would submit proposals to do our park district strategic plan, and then use, if we can at least get one, use that to put a number in the budget so that we're budgeting to begin this process next year. So I don't know if there's any questions or input or anything that the board has specifically as we're talking to these consultants that they wanted to keep in mind.
Broad question. What is going to be like the primary goal and like purpose of a consultant in this situation? Just going around asking the right questions and then writing a report? Or what do we, bluntly, what are we paying them to do?
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, typically that is, it's just somebody with that expertise that has the time and is, skilled at looking, asking the right questions and looking at the information that we have to develop that. And it's typically, they're taking your last strategic plan and updating that, not necessarily starting from scratch. But with that one, of course, and with, COVID, since a lot of things have changed, that will probably be, done differently, I guess, in the new strategic plan. But
Why would they be done differently? We're kind of in and out of it, not to belittle everything, but we're, all the regulations that were in place in 2019 are kind of in place now. I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm already seeing, prices just go through my head. And, we have spent a lot of time and energy this year going through a large question that a strategic plan didn't take into account. So there's only so far you can look down the road. So before writing a check for something like this, I want to make sure that we as a board know what we want to get out of it.
We never really, as a board, we never really went over that plan. So, in 2019, the board never looked at the strategic plan to say, we did this, we didn't do this, you know, whatever it was. And then, of course, COVID came and new executive directors came and so on. Maybe we ought to look at that, and maybe we all ought to take it upon ourselves to look at that strategic plan and see what it is we need updating.
I think it's a really good strategy.
Before, as you say, Scott, we write a check to do something that maybe isn't
Necessary.
quite so critical.
Yeah, I don't want to do it for the sake of doing it.
Right.
I guess when I start looking at the elements of the plan that they did before, a lot of these are things that we can kind of assess, but also a lot of input from the superintendents. I would like to hear what you think we would achieve out of the strategic plan and how that would help you in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess that would be one question. I think Jim and Noah were here the last time that the strategic plan was done. How did who do they meet with and how did they collect that information?
Do you remember, 7 years ago?
Yeah,
8 years ago?
so Noah and I both attended, you know, he said he forgot. Barbara Heller was the one who was like a mediator. She was the one that was the consultant that came in. Basically, we had all the full-time staff with the board, and we met for like, it was 2 days off-site, just developing goals of the partnership. You know, can that be accomplished by reviewing the old strategic plan and coming up with new goals? Sure. You know, as staff, we would go over those and with our executive director at the time, Ron Tulsky, and evaluate it at the end of each year, whatever elements of that strategic plan affected our jobs, our roles.
Yeah, I think it definitely gives you give the staff, like, gives the staff direction what the board wants to see the park district. The road, right? Where do we want to be in 5 years from now? What steps do we want to take? Some of the things that were in the previous strategic plan were staff retention. How do we get to that point? How do we get to succession planning? How do we, you know, what is the timeline of sometimes parks, what do we want this park to be? Is it going to continue to be our future park, or is this in the center hub, or is there a change that we see in the future? So it allows the interaction back and forth between the board and the staff, and then lays it out so that there's no questions about what are we doing next year, what are we doing 2 years from now? We need to hit these goals. How do we get to those goals? Those bullet points that are laid out. Sometimes it is nice having a third party come in and point to something and say, well, you think this is a priority, but why do you think that's a priority? And maybe it's not. Maybe the whole board disagrees on the subject, or maybe staff thinks something's important, but the board doesn't. So how do we bridge that gap between what everybody wants so that this partnership is successful?
I guess my question would be, do you think, this is pretty in-depth, and when I look at this, I look and see, okay, the balanced scorecard. We did a balanced scorecard, and I know, Jim, you're using it somewhat, but we as a board don't really see a lot of that. And that could just be an operational thing that you do. I'm just throwing out ideas. Some of these develop a comprehensive program plan. I think there was one. I think there's a comprehensive plan, but I don't think it's been finished in a lot of areas. So I guess I'm wondering if we need the strategic plan now, or if there's elements that maybe we don't need to do in the interest of saving money, but I don't know.
The old director would bring up what are some things that we still haven't completed. So, you know, this all kind of took a turn, I think, when there was a change in directors, and COVID, you know, just started. So obviously, you know, that really changed operations, and there were some things that were pushed off. And you check the box, that's not the only thing like a comprehensive, recreation master plan. So there's an element on there, life cycle changes that we do every year. Well, we do need to get back to reporting to the board on that. You know, we do that internally as a staff, but these are things that we need to discuss in the strategic plan. Hey, this is what we would like to see as a board from staff. You know, we need to hear from you, or how you want, even if it be simplistic as a board report. Because everybody has a different view of what a board report looks like, and what should be our benchmarks within that board report that staff should be looking at, for like participation levels, or it could be findings. It could be how many trees Noah's gonna cut this year. Could be those elements. And I had to bring it up.
Again, I think we should just communicate with all of us, with the board members. Let's go over this, and
Yeah,
maybe
strategic
then in 2
plan.
weeks we can
Yeah.
follow up on this. And I would have to say, John, that I'm not sure how useful it would be if a lot of effort and certainly money was spent on trying to coordinate this with the school and village. I don't see that being very useful.
Well, these are two separate things, right? There's the park district comprehensive plan, and then perhaps kind of melding the three entities together. Okay. Are you putting like an RFQ out for both at the same time?
Right now, we haven't done an RFQ, we're just gonna, meet with,
Sorry, I
some
use that as
consultants.
an overarching term, not like it's a.
Yeah, we're gonna meet with, well, I mean, I was focused on the Park District one.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that the school district, and village, when we've talked, they have consultants that they've used before, they've reached out and got some pricing and talked about doing, you know, the combined one as well. We haven't done that, we haven't, you know, started down that.
I don't think it's a bad idea to ask the question. I just, I'm always skeptical, things like that. So, just want to play devil's advocate a little bit.
It'd be nice to see, like, just do like an update with the staff to know what exactly was reached with that strategic goal. Because it was 2019 and COVID hit in 2020, so like what was accomplished from that strategic goal? What are all the things?
Right.
Just, it would be nice to be updated on all the, what was achieved and what do we need to work with? What are we still, working to, because I've looked it over and I think it's pretty great. It has great measurable, I think it's fantastic, and I was always curious why we hadn't, but not that, and then I realized it's COVID, and, we had a different plan for a little bit, and now we just need to get back on that plan. And so I'm in agreement that if we have a plan in place that we can use and we don't have to spend money, I'm totally for that. I think, and I think that's the right thing to do as stewards of Park District.
Yeah, I mean, then the question always comes up, we get this strategic plan, and how often are you coming into your offices every morning and looking at the strategic plan and saying, okay, I need to do this and this, and measuring it on a regular basis to see what's being accomplished? Or is it something that you say, okay, these are nice ideas and I know about it, and now I put it on the shelf and,
Would be nice.
and then I go out and do my job. And I'm not being critical, please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not, I think with all these consulting plans, that's something that, whether it's a park district or a corporation or whatever, what actually is done with that once it's done?
One thing, Jim, you and I have talked about is data, getting data, having good data. And you had mentioned that several years ago now, you were looking at a software program that would allow you to collect a lot more information. I know that kind of fell by the wayside, probably because of money, but was that in the strategic plan or the comprehensive plan, or was that outside of that? I'm just curious about that one.
I believe it was outside of that, right, Sean? I know that before you got here, we were discussing.
Was this with Amelia or?
Yeah, and I think that's what she's referring, recreation software.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhat, we were talking about the data that we get and how we, we can really cut and paste, cut our information.
So, John and I have been meeting with, matter of fact, got the final meeting with them, that I heard back today. So we have been meeting with them and getting this information. When they told us they had an app, it wasn't exactly what we thought it was.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So that was kind of a game changer with the app. And then, the cost was roughly $18,000 to $20,000.
About 20,000 more per year than what we're currently using.
Well, that was just an example of something like that, like if we decide that that information, that data is important to us, so we can really assess what we're doing and we understand who's using our services, how they're using our services. And it wasn't in the strategic plan, then I want to make sure that we're using the strategic plan to make the right decisions and.
Yeah. So we're still evaluating the recreation software. We actually found out through this process that our current software program hasn't been updated. And so that's our next step, is we really need to do our diligence with ActiveNet and what the capability of ActiveNet is, because I believe there's more to it that on data collection and how we go about it and how we simplify some things, even with staff and residents and how they register. So that's just an ongoing conversation, I think.
Okay. But that came out of the strategic plan, or at least the awareness that
yes,
there was more.
That's
more. All
yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes the strategic plans, I've heard in one of the sessions that I had attended, educational session, that it can be useful or helpful when you're applying for grants to have a current updated strategic plan. So what's that?
Can we get a grant to pay for it?
Maybe.
And of course, John, from our point of view, the strategic plan for us relates to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's, it's gotta be how we tie that in with you, because, we're not looking at these guys.
Yeah.
Well, we look at them, but we're just waiting.
When I see strategic plans come up, it's either usually someone new comes in and they want to like do big, or we've identified that we have some major problems and we don't know which direction we're going in. And I guess I'd like your idea of where you think we are with strategic plan and how you think that's going to help how you operate the board, the Park District. Mm-hmm.
Good question. I mean, I don't know. It's not something that'll be used, every day in the day-to-day. I mean, parts of it maybe, but a lot of it is not, part of the day-to-day operation. This would be my first experience in working with one, so it's hard to say. For me, I can't say, we did one, Chill Park, and here's, how it worked. I've been through the process, and by the time I got here, we were, in COVID and just trying to keep the agency, moving and not, so much focus on that, on the strategic plan, that it, or renewing it or whatever. So, I think this is a good discussion. We could look into it more to find out what benefits would we get. I mean, for what we're going to pay, I think also it'd be interesting to know what would we pay, if this is this, relatively, is it going to be an expensive process or not? That might also help the decision making. But yeah, I think that, we could work on putting together some benefits and, how that, list of how it could benefit the park district if we were to do it.
And even some of the simple things, mission statement, vision, value, again, those are great if you're really looking at like, what are we gonna change? Where are we going? And unless we feel there's a need, I don't know, there might be some things we could do that would cut
Well,
some
I'd
of
like
this
to
out.
hear from Jim and Noah, because they've been here, and they're the working horse.
Exactly.
Right? So you were here for the strategic plan, so and of course, we had a setback with COVID, but now we're moving, now we should be on board back to where we were, right?
Mhm.
And so, what direction was the park district going? Because, like, we came right on that, right, right before COVID, and so, where do you think, like, where are you headed? Where are you going and where were you going? And what are you doing? Like, what's your process of continuing in that direction? Because that's where you should be now, no longer in COVID, but now we're moving forward.
Yeah, it's a tricky question because we tend to fall back to 2019 because we're not, we say we're not into COVID. And pretty much now we're just dealing with COVID as an illness like the flu or anything like that. We still have some regulations that we have with employees when they have COVID, but other than that, we don't require people to wear masks, and, we're not having capacity issues, where we only can have so many people. What makes it tricky is 2019 and 2022 is different. The world has changed because of COVID. Not so much with wearing the masks and everything, but how people are sensitive to certain things. It has really changed. So there are some excellent positive changes that have happened where we went from having nobody, we still had quite a few people, but we had this amount of people attending programs and coming to the beach and going to the pool to here in overnight. It was like literally, right when schools came back full swing, we went all the way up here. After school care, 80 kids. Well, we haven't seen 80 kids since 2016, 2017. That wasn't a 2019 thing, that was back then. So, we opened up a new preschool room, and that was part of the strategic plan to evaluate the preschool. So that's something that didn't change in the strategic plan, that's something we still move forward with, and we did that last year. So we take those elements, but again, it's not 2019, it's 2022. So now we have to look at it differently, and that's probably why we need to evaluate the current strategic plan and come up with what is our future. What, if we're going to be having these numbers, how do we continue to increase? Because we do have capacity issues, not because of COVID, just for the sheer fact of a shortage of employees and shortage of room, putting them in spaces when, during the summer, particularly with camps. We solved one issue with the preschool, and we're seeing that growth, and we're seeing the money, the financial growth as well, participation, and that's a great start. But that, I think we can't compare. I think we got to move forward in 22 and look at all these high participation levels that we've experienced and where are the low ones and how can we move forward? Because we face different things at the fitness center. That's probably the biggest challenge. And it is still because of COVID. It's for people purchasing their own home gyms, their own equipment, and it's people that, we have an aging community and we have a young community that moved in. The older don't want to come back, so how do we address that? And that should be part of the strategic plan and getting some ideas and making it all come together and come up with some goals.
Yeah, well, that brings a really good point, that with any type of consultant that comes in, I think it's really important that they bring external data and information to us as a board and as employees to help us determine what that path looks like. Ask us for that information. Hey, how are the demographics in Lake Bluff changed since we did this last? So how best can we serve the community over the next 5 to 10 years.
And Noah, anything with facilities?
To kind of piggyback on one of the points from the previous strategic plan, I think Jim and I work really well together. We both have this symbiotic relationship. I can't do what I do without him, and he can't do what he can't do without me. I spend the money, he makes it, but we need each other at the end of the day. One of the things that's really important, and we both look at this from two different sides, right? He's looking at the revenue side of things. How can he get the kids to the camp and get the bodies in the fitness center and kettle? And I'm looking from the maintenance side of, okay, well, how do we make sure that those courts are cleared, or how do we make sure that the equipment's up to speed? And we're both struggling with the same thing. And part of the strategic plan, as I mentioned, was staff retention and getting staff on board and keeping staff and succession planning. Because at some point, I won't be here. I'm hoping that's a long way off, please. But someday I will leave. Someday Michael will leave. Someday Jim will leave. Someday we'll all rotate through, and there'll be a new board. There'll be new staff members, and you need to try to plan for how do we get people here that want to be here, and how do you keep that staff, and how do you plan for when that day does come that Micah retires, who's taking over facility maintenance? To me, that's a huge thing. I know it's in the strategic plan from 15 to 19. I know it's in there, and we haven't touched on that, I don't think, in the time that we had that, because we have had staff retention problems. Every district does. It's not just us. It's not just like Bluff problem. It's just systemic at this point. But that is something we need to focus on, because if I don't have the staff, I can't do the maintenance to bring in the kids to play the sports. You know, it's circular. So that's one thing that I think is important, and I don't have the answer, so maybe a consultant does and says, well, you guys aren't paying enough, or you need to offer more full-time staff positions, or you need to offer these benefits because this park district's offering it and they're getting the staffing that is keeping them where they need to be, where you need to make these changes. I don't have my finger on the pulse of that necessarily. Now, as a consultant, I would hope they would. If they're dealing with all these different park districts and setting up strategic plans, then they should have a feel for what is driving the industry. At least that's the hope. Because I don't have that answer, and I desperately would like to get it. I'm sure everybody who's in an industry that has staffing wants that answer at this point. So that's where I look to the strategic plan to go, okay, we've got a roadmap. We need to have X amount of full-time staff by, in 3 years out, we should be fully staffed, and we should have these staff members in place. And then that way we can get to the next stage. Now, it's just one area of it, and there's lots of other bits and pieces and parts, but that's what's important to me, so I focus on it, because if we don't have the staffing, if we don't have the after-school care staff to watch the kids, then we can't bring in 80 kids.
From my point of view, I'm hearing some really good arguments, and what I'm also hearing from you, and I thank you for that, and what I'm also hearing, though, is that it sounds like we really need to be careful if we do this, that it be a real hands-on strategic plan, and not, lofty goals and generalities, but more specific over the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever period we're looking at, that it be really hands-on to help you, which in turn helps you drive things forward, rather than something, and we've talked about it, John, the reports that were made, the consulting studies that were made, and so on and so forth. I think we're all afraid that you get a nice study that goes on the shelf, and then 5 years later you say, gee, those were pretty colors, and
For sure.
And what do we do from it?
And is it a new strategic plan, or is it a refresh? I mean, it's pretty old, but I'm just, yeah.
Well, I think we face different
Challenges.
Yeah, than we did when that was developed. And as Commissioner Weber said, You know, the demographics of, you know, there might have been a major change. We don't know, right? You know, we need to get that information. And if there is, then that become.
Change the puzzle.
Yep.
And if there was a demographic change, there was a change of people moving from the city into the suburbs, and that changes, it does change a lot. And then
Employees changed, you know, because of COVID. We deal with a different situation with the employees and how they want to work and operate, you know, and that needs to be discussed in a retention.
I think if I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but to one of your points, Commissioner Greenfield, was, you know, is this something we just do and put on the shelf, or how was this handled before? Some of the things, like, let's say, for instance, you know, there was a strategic bullet point. We said, okay, this is what we want to achieve. It was an overarching, here's what we're going to get to at the end of 5 years. And then there's like a series of subsets, like we got to hit these goalposts in order to achieve the main goal. That was part of the trickle down from the executive director to the staff was, all right, by the end of this year, we should be at this point. And then that was part of our review too, was, okay, did you achieve that goal? You were asked to research playgrounds and what's the best ADA accessible playground in order to make us, you know, up to speed with where we should be. Where did you get? What did you get? Well, I've talked to every playground manufacturer. Here's all the options. It's going to cost us this much money to change over the playground at Blair Park. Okay, we hit that bullet point. Now we know where we're going to be at. What's the next bullet point in this overarching? So it wasn't a stagnant document necessarily. And some things we hit, some things we didn't. You know, some things just changed depending on what the item, what you pick in 2022 may be completely different in 2026 that you get to. Like, oh, well, the industry's changed completely. Nobody cares about this anymore. This is the hot thing. You know, who would have guessed that, you know, paddle would be, or pickleball.
pickleball.
The pickleball, if you would come to me 5 years ago and said, we're going to pickleball, I did that in gym class back in high school. What? But now it's the hot thing, which is great. I mean, that's great to see. But if you would plan a strategic plan based on it, I would have said you're silly. But you have to pivot and adjust too. Sometimes you don't hit your goals. Just the industry changes. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just had to realize that it can happen.
I feel just thinking, like, just looking at the strategic, I mean, it sounds like we definitely need like it updated because everything's changed, but also, you know, I would love to see where we were and where we are right now and just, you know, the direction that we went. And I don't know how you can just share that with us of like which goals, because you said which some goals we didn't. I'd love to know what those goals were, like which ones you guys did and which ones you reached. And it's just kind of nice to know
I think
from the strategic plan in the past, because I would think you were still going in that direction even with COVID, because that's the mission, right? And that's our vision, is to strengthen the spirit of the community. And you guys did a great job of that. You know, you kept the pool open, you kept the beach open, and that's part of the plan, right? Yeah. To have all facilities working. And so, but I'd like to see that like presented in some way to the board, if possible. Does that make sense?
I think that's a big ask ahead of something like this. I think that's kind of what the consultants do.
Okay.
A little bit. Yeah,
because I mean, I think the part of that plan is you're supposed to be reevaluating it. Like if there's measurements and it's like quarterly, like we should be seeing that, and it would have been, I mean, and I feel like that's something we can do at the committee levels, you know, where we kind of break it down into smaller bits and you share those goals that you're hitting with the board.
And based on looking at the strategic plan, then the following were the top priorities, and the first one was a comprehensive program plan. So is that going to lead to another consultant to do the program plan, or do you think that was a specific situation with a strategic plan?
No, I created the comprehensive master plan. I did not use a consultant for that.
Oh, you did that?
I did, yes.
Congratulations.
Okay. So it's a living, breathing document. So I work with it on staff on a quarterly basis, actually seasonal basis. So every time we finish a season, we discuss what programs are working, what are the new programs, you know, what are programs that are just leveling off and what need to go away, or if they don't need to go away, what do we need to do to bring up the levels of participation? So that document, we didn't use a consultant for.
Okay. So this is something that you do.
And again, it's in conjunction with the board, because at one point, you know, the 110%, I'm thinking of that was kind of directed from the board of, again, what are the priorities of the districts, and how do we want to structure our fees based on the 110% model. So that was a consultant that was brought in to kind of drive what we're doing as far as programming and fee-based, but there has to be buy-in from everybody too. I mean, it has to be something that we as a district board and staff are saying, yes, we want to make sure that this is where we're headed down the road. That was an example where, yes, a consultant was important, because they bring in the knowledge to ask the right questions again. What should we be charging for? What should be subsidized? That really, the nuts and bolts of that whole process. But it was a long process between sitting down and going over, okay, what should basketball be 100% subsidized? Should the beach be 100% subsidized? You know, all of the programs, we went through everything.
See, unfortunately, you know, when the three of us and Nikki started on the board in 2019, for various reasons which I won't go into, nothing was done with this strategic plan at all by the board. We never heard anything about it, basically. 2020 comes, then everything goes south, and everyone's just trying to keep their head above water. And then the last year and a half, we've been preoccupied with other matters. And so none of us really have had the time. I mean, there just has been so much going on that none of us on the board has had the time to think about these things, or to go back, or to revisit, or do the things that we should have done in 2019. And so for us, you know, from that point of view, I think maybe a reset and saying, okay, let's get this thing going again. It sounds to me like it's probably a really good idea. Just so the board can get back to doing what the board should do in normal times. Jennifer, would you agree with me?
I'm listening to all of this and good discussion. Yes. I really appreciate what the staff is input on that too.
All right, so you're
Gonna get some estimate.
The short answer is yes.
keep the cost down, $2,000. Knock yourself out.
Yeah, we can pay it for, but
Yeah, that's not entirely true.
yeah, they didn't pay much for Jim, and he did ours.
Seriously.
I gotta review that
Jim, you sold yourself
contract.
short.
Any other comments? Can I then please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, we don't need a roll call vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all very much. Jennifer,